Hello, and welcome back to Unhinged Curiosity. It's been a while since we did an episode, just me and you. Feels good to be back in your corner. Hopefully you enjoyed a couple of the guest episodes. I think this will be the first one I've recorded back in Australia solo. So it's good to be back. It's a beautiful place to be, and I'm very much looking forward to speaking to you guys again today about the attention rebuild. But first, I just want to premise with the fact I haven't spoke about it yet, and I'm not, particularly political at all. I don't really express my political views. But someone who did, and someone who died last week when I'm recording this was, as you've all will have seen, is Charlie Kirk, and I want to bring this up because people online or people in the world used to get cancelled or get hate online when people disagree with them, but now people get shot. And I think it's important that whatever you're doing in your life, that you are counted and you stand up for what you believe in and don't just blend in. And neither should any of us. We should all have the right to our own opinions. But with that, I think often what happens in the world now is people see opinions, not people. I've seen this myself even in the past week with a large number of people who unfollowed me. I saw some of the creators who'd posted something about Charlie. I think he had 30,000 people unfollow him. And it's sometimes a good thing to do this. I think this chapter in my life, I've spoke about this a few times, I named this chapter Honesty and Crushing the Ego. So just crushing the previous versions of me and anything that held standards where I wouldn't put my own opinion out. And I think it's important that you do that. Otherwise, you're just liked for someone that you're not. So yeah, please continue to be as honest as possible. That's what I'm going to continue to try and do with this podcast. And if people don't like that, that's fine. But also, like I've said to a few people who I've spoken to in Australia the past week, we can disagree and still be friends. I think this is the thing that we think we need to agree with every single thing or every single person that we come across in life. And if we did, we'd end up with no one in our life. So I just want to premise today's podcast with that. And also just in honor of someone who's just lost their life, who was a free speaking individual, and no matter what your thoughts were on Charlie Kirk. And then secondly, I've just opened up, which is why I've been really busy, a brand new business called Hybrid Body Plan. It's the first time I'm working with people again on a one-to-one basis, and I'm going to be working with bigger builds who want to try and, or who are stuck on losing weight and want to increase their engine whilst keeping muscle and do it in a way where they're not giving up loads of time. So if you want to find out more about that, I'll leave the link below in the description to wherever you're watching this if you're interested in working with me on a one-to-one basis, and you can book in for a chit chat or find out more information there. But there's quite a lot in today's podcast that I wanted to speak about. There's this real switch and swing in the way that our attention works. I feel like all of us, including me, are having our attention pulled from pillar to post from different places, and it really annoys me. And I feel like every day I'm fighting to try and focus my own attention on something, to get tasks done without being on my phone, without wasting time, without having all this leakage. And I think, most of our lives these days spend our time on smartphones throughout the day. And over the past year, a lot of research that we're going to go into today has shown how our attention has changed, switched, and lessened, decreased as time's gone on. It's a measurable shrink. So one of the things I've actually pointed out within this is that the average American touches the phone 2,600 times per day. That's crazy. And then the average person picks up the phone 52 times per day. But again, when you think about this, it's really a subconscious thing that we all do. We all pick up a phone, but you would never think you pick up 52 times per day on average. Some of us more. And one of the things that I did recently with one of the men's retreats that I did, and I'm going to be doing more of them in the future, is I grabbed a lunchbox, or anything I had in the kitchen. And when we went to the event, I took everybody's phone off them for the entire weekend. They just had a quick 5 minutes to text loved ones and tell them, and the phones were gone for the whole weekend. No videos, no photos, no messaging people, no calling people. And it was the most beautiful weekend we'd had. And sometimes it takes that to be forced for you to gauge insight on what it feels like to just live again, not live through a screen, not constantly have notifications, not have those short dopamine hits followed by endless scrolls, not have your attention switched and pulled from pillar to post. And it was just great time to spend some quality time with the lads. And that for me really shone a light on the impact it can have when we take a little bit of time away from screens and away from our phones. And it's crazy what we can do with our phones now. On the flight over to Australia last week, I had a FaceTime with my little nephew at 30 to 40,000 feet in the air. And it's crazy now that we have the internet and the Wi-Fi capabilities to be able to be on a video FaceTime or on a call that high up in the air with the quality is absolutely fine with being thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of miles away from the individual. So I think sometimes it's now impossible to even get away from that, because you used to be able to get onto a plane and just log in, do some work, do some typing, or watch a movie or a book. But now you can get on the internet even 40,000 feet in the air. And I think that's why generally when I travel, I try and stay offline, because I like to monotask. We spoke about this in the productivity podcast a few weeks ago. I think the play these days isn't to be able to take pride in multitasking, but monotasking is just where you focus on one thing because you're not switching from pillar to post. I think there's been a lot of studies, which I referenced in the previous one, where you are 20% more productive by just focusing on one task and getting it done and complete, and feeling that good dopamine hit from ticking the task off, rather than just fluctuating through a load of tasks that you never actually complete. And the thing that happened when I got off the flight as well anyway was that, or what tends to happen is, you haven't been on your phone for a while, or you haven't been on social media apps, and you get that quick dopamine hit, you feel good from it. But then what happens after that is that you then just get stuck on your phone and you're in a mindless scroll where you don't feel any better, and time goes by and you're thinking, why the hell am I still on my phone? You've got the immediate dopamine hit, but you are stuck now on that just mindless feed scroll of not really getting anything from it. And then again, eventually you just feel like crap. Another story, and this is just how obviously addicted I've been previously on my phone, is that I was on the phone to my mum, and we just mid conversation, I went, Mum, I've lost my phone. And she was like, what are you talking about? We're on the phone. That's how much I was used to having my phone in my hand, looking at my screen. I was wondering where the hell it was gone. It wasn't in my pocket. It wasn't in my hand. It was next to my face. I was on my phone. And again, that was a slap in the face from reality. I was just saying, Ben, you're on your phone way too much. I think we all do it if we're completely honest about it. And it's something that I'm becoming more and more aware of, and something that I want to try and pull away from. But today I want to give some action steps as well of how we can increase our attention and pull it away from screens, because I think these have been really useful for me over the past couple of weeks. Most of the things I'm going to speak in today's podcast, I wouldn't advise them all, but the things I have tested myself to try and go to extremes with how I can regain some attention. Not all of these are healthy ways to do it, but I think the thing I'm trying to use my own body for, my own voice for now, is just experimenting with things and testing things. And like I said to you before, the underbelly of this podcast is trying to find the balance between productivity and being content, but also taking you on this journey along with me, where I'm going to be pushing limits and asking myself questions and being uncomfortable and open my mind to different things. So hopefully that's what we'll do with today. But there's different types of attention, and we find that when people are challenged, there seems to be like rhythms within the mind in the day where we call this focus attention, where we have to focus on the task because it's difficult, it's challenging. And like we spoke about before, it's usually best to try and approach these tasks early in the morning when you've got a bit better focus. And then we have other forms of focus and concentration called, I think it's called rote activity. This is kind of generally where you're just skimming through emails or messages, and it doesn't require a whole lot of brain capacity to be able to complete those tasks. So it's kind of the fluffy stuff. But there's an interesting stat. It's more of a scary stat, I'd say, that I pulled up to do with how our attention has changed over the past couple of years. And it is, back in 2004, it was found the average attention span on any screen was about 2.5 minutes. Throughout the years, it became shorter. In 2012, it was found to be 75 seconds. And this was through screen records that they'd taken from different individuals' phones. And then in the last 5 to 6 years, it's been found to average 47 seconds. 47 seconds is where people's attention span now ranges to on average. I would guess this probably coincides quite well with social media and the uptake of TikTok and these real short form reels where a lot of them aren't any longer than a minute. And we started to train our brains to now only be adapted to that length of content or that level of focus, because whatever you focus your brain on or whatever you train your brain to do, it will optimize for. And if you're only giving it that short form content, it's going to optimize to be able to take in that short form content and not anything more. And when you're on socials and the short form stuff, the content does all the work for you. You don't really need to focus because it's all being shortened down and intensified within a real short sequence. And what basically happens, and I really like the way that this was broken down when I listened to it, is that instead of taking the stairs, your brain's then taking the elevator. It's just on autopilot listening to these videos where all the information, the meat and the juice of it has just been put into it. And sometimes that's great for sharing news, but your brain then doesn't have to really listen or do the work that it would have to from like this now. You're probably taking nuggets of information away from it, but I'm going to speak for 45 minutes plus on my stories and my opinions and the things that I've done in order to come to some of these conclusions or where some of this information's come from. And this is why I love doing the podcast. I think I'm definitely pulling more and more away from the short form stuff. I just really enjoy doing this more. And I find, even for me personally, and I said this at the start of the podcast, it's going to be a selfish journey for me of just finding out the things that I really enjoy in life. And hopefully you guys will enjoy the journey as well. But I'm not surprised the kind of things happen. I mean, even I spend a lot of time when I'm in the UK with my little nephew. I love being a big kid and just spend as much time as possible with him. And even with the way that social media is set up now, I'll walk into the living room, and I remember when I was a kid, I'd watch movies or watch films. It might be an hour to 2 hours long, watching the Disney movies or whatever was on. And then I think we went through an era where kids were watching more and more Netflix, and then kids started watching more and more YouTube. Now, whenever I walk in, my nephews, the only thing that's on the screen is YouTube shorts. Just watch them gone, watch them gone, watch them gone. And like, how they will sit there for hours and watch it, and I try and get them away from it as soon as possible when I see them doing it. But they're just watching on the TV, basically watching reels. Like that is the epitome of how attention span has come further and further down. Kids aren't even watching films or movies or TV shows anymore. They're watching YouTube shorts and watching them flick through, and they're just full of crap, garbage that's screaming for people's attention. And another thing that I pulled up, it turns out that children that are as young as 2 to 4 years old, they already average 2.5 hours of screen time a day. And when they get to be between 5 and 8, they average about 3 hours of screen time a day. And that's just scary. And I think we see this more and more because I'm not a parent, and I'm sure it is one of the most difficult jobs in the world. But I think the thing that I often see is parents putting iPads in front of children's faces when they're at meals or when the child is upset or crying, because I guess it's an easy fix to extinguish that scenario straight away. And again, I'm not pointing fingers of blame, but I'm sure this is probably also what contributes to the rise in screen usage for children, along with what my nephews are doing when they're watching these YouTube shorts on TV for hours on end. So it's something that I'm massively aware of for when I become a parent one day. And I mean, even me maybe mentioning this, it might be make you more aware if you become a parent one day, if you're already a parent, and the ways in which you entertain children. Again, I know it's not an easy job whatsoever, but I'm just a bit worried from these current stats I've been looking at when I've looked at attention and just the way in which screen time just ever seems to be increasing, and how it affects especially children's brains, which aren't formed properly and are vulnerable and squishy and adaptable. I just think so early on it's important that they do other things. I just remember, obviously screens weren't as much of a thing there, but I was always outside. I was pissing around. I was lighting fires. I was in the mud. I was jumping up and down. I was falling out of trees. I was kicking balls. I was running away from people. I was, anything and everything. I'd be amongst it and being a cheeky little boy. And I think that's one of the things that we've definitely got lost, or we tell boys not to be boys anymore. They're just glued to screens. And yeah, I think we don't know the full full capacity of what the knock-on effect is going to be of that. So yeah, this was some of this research is from if you want to check it out, is from Gloria Mark, who wrote Attention Span, and I've been reading through it when I was on the flight over here, and she mentioned that the problem is that when children are very young, there are certain parts of their brain that are not yet mature. So their ability to help control and part of the brain called executive function and a different type of function. I can't even say that word. You can think of it as a governor of the mind. So she's found in her studies that one of the common side effects of this downward shift in our attention span is stress. The more attention switching, the more stress. And what Gloria means by this is it's the attention switch in which I even did it just before this podcast when I was preparing some of the final notes, is that I was then just been posting on TikTok and then I then checking my episode that I posted on YouTube and Spotify from yesterday. So I was constantly switching my attention between a couple of tasks. And like we've just been speaking about, that's the worst thing you can do for productivity. But not only that, it then causes more stress. But it's kind of this vicious circle that stress causes us to attention switch. And then the more that we attention switch, the more that we stress. I think if you can probably think about if you have stressful scenarios in your day and then how much you switch between tasks or how cluttered your brain is or how much you're switching from thing to thing, it feels like, I'm never finishing anything. Everything's just a constant endless loop. I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. I don't feel like I'm completing anything. And it makes you feel more stressed so that you do it even more. And I had that this week because I've had a month where I've obviously launched this podcast and I've had to travel with it from the UK to Australia and try and find studios and then get in episodes when I'm really tired. And I've just launched a new business, Hybrid Body Plan, and then I've got my other businesses that I own and social media channels, and I just felt so much overwhelmed. So what I did this week, because I sometimes feel like I'm putting in a lot of the energy but not getting the output, is I bought a whiteboard. And sometimes I just like going back to the good old ages. I have a written paper diary, which sometimes people take the mickey out of me for, but I just love writing things down on paper. That's why I have my journal as well. I'm a big advocate on writing and taking yourself away from the screen. And then also having the whiteboard, I have it up in my room just beside my podcast, and I focus on 3 big priorities and then put subtasks underneath that. And I just really streamlined all the crap away from the things, and the thing that I need to focus on not going to have the biggest impact. And I think, like I've said before, aiming to be more productive should be the goal, not just looking to do more, because busier doesn't mean better. And that's the thing that we can all often get stuck up in. And sometimes there's going to be times where you feel and you have to just get in the trenches and you have to get things done. You have to knock out tasks. But I think for me, always leaning back into minimalism and thinking, could this be done better? And if it can, then I like to try and prioritize things that I'm not just doing everything mediocre. I'm really just not a big believer in the whole terminology of the way that you do anything is how you do everything. And I'd had this debate with people before, because the greatest athletes in the world, the greatest thinkers in the world, the greatest musicians in the world, the greatest whatever profession in the world are absolutely unbelievable at one thing and quite generally terrible at everything else. And that's because you can't apply yourself 100% to 100 different things. That math just doesn't add up. If you want to be great, you need to focus your attention and focus it into 1 or 2 different channels. Otherwise, you just become a master of nothing. And that's a big thing I called it my whiteboard week this week, and I'm even looking at it now. It's just, I've looked at all the tasks that I've ticked off on there. It's a big representation of things that I've got through and the goals I need to get done this week and the time I put into them and the achievements that have come as a direct consequence of it. And it's made me feel so much better, because I think the thing that we're all trying to find with our attention and when we're dealing with work is, how do we find flow? And flow is defined by a psychologist, hopefully not butchering the name. It's Miley, I'm going to butcher this second name, Skitskinfamily. It's definitely not how you say it. But defines flow state as a complete immersion in activity where you're so absorbed that you lose track of time. Your sense of self fades and the activity feels almost effortless. People often describe this as being in the zone. And I mean, I've just been for a run this morning, and I think that's sometimes when my mind's completely clear and I've had a good amount of time to think about things and my thoughts on my own, and I'm not allowing different thoughts to come in or negative thoughts to come in, because one of the other things that I've become more self-aware of, and I wanted to give this gift to you, is that you are not your thoughts. Our belief and our thoughts are two different things. And when thoughts come into our head, they're often given to us. They're often come from somewhere else. And our thoughts might be telling you that you're a piece of shit. But your belief is, you know you're a good person, or you know you're going to achieve it, or you know you're going to get that goal. But your thoughts sometimes derail you away from that. But if you can always think about when your thoughts come in and telling you you are a piece of shit, or you're never going to make it, or should you go back, or should you not try, or should you not do the thing, or record the thing, or put yourself out there, or have the conversation, have in the back of your mind your belief that you know you're good enough and you can achieve it. And it doesn't matter what other people do, and you're going to go and do it anyway. So thoughts versus beliefs. Thoughts are very temporary. They come and fluctuate in and out of our lives. Beliefs are those strongholds, the railway track that underpins the carriage of which you're traveling on. So keep bringing those beliefs back to the forefront of your mind. So I sometimes get that with running, but other tasks that you might get to flow state in is typing, writing, reading. If you're a musician, music, people get into flow states, and you'll often just find that the work is very effortless. But there was 3 things I've written down for today's podcast on how you can maybe try and hack for better attention, especially with the scary stats of how attention's changing. And before I quickly go into some of them, these are a couple of things that I've tried as immediate effect this week, and these aren't things that I would recommend for you guys to do. And again, just using my body as a bit of a tool or a bit of a test dummy at the moment. And there's a video that I'm putting out on YouTube. It'll probably be next week. I tested GLP-1 meds last year, which is the Ozempic, the fat loss drug. And the reason that I tried it is because I had a lot of clients and people who actually messaged me on Instagram as well, asking me about GLP-1s. And I was like, I've given some of the information and the evidence that had been presented on GLP-1s so far. But I was like, do you know what? I'm going to try them for 4 weeks. And it wasn't because I wanted to lose weight or need to lose body fat. I was actually quite happy at that point and happy now with where my composition's at. But I was like, I'm just going to try them for 4 weeks because a lot of the evidence and research to show that, it wasn't particularly dangerous. And I thought I'd do my own research on it. So I actually recorded that, or some of that video of me injecting those as well, about a year ago. And I'm just putting the video together this week where I'm going to talk about them. It's something that I'm always hesitant to talk about these things sometimes, because I don't want to advocate for people to do them, but I like to give my own experience and personal opinion on them, as well as having the evidence that's come from all the research so far. So the thing that I actually tried this week for my own attention, because whenever I fly back to Australia and I'm really jet lagged, it's sometimes difficult for me to hold attention, and because my sleep isn't great. So I actually tried the little nicotine patches this week. I think they're called Zyn. And what nicotine does, for anyone who doesn't know, for focus and for work, because it's become quite popular with inside the community of people who are trying to lock in and wanting to get more out of their own work and who are looking to optimize. Nicotine acts as a stimulant which equates to better vigilance and reaction time and short-term focus. So that's something that you'll feel from it. And I bought these 1.5 milligram pouches, so they're really, really, really tame and don't have a lot of nicotine in. And sometimes these patches, I think, were used by soldiers and writers and traders, and even recently gym bros. And they often say that they notice it kick in and helps them get into that lock-in. It's more like the way I describe it is more like a temporary spotlight. It gives you a short window of where your attention system is firing, and the timing of it definitely matters. Like pre-work, pre-study is really important, and it helps just give you that clean edge and clarity when you're doing things. But again, nicotine, it's one of those things which is addictive and people have dependency on. I don't recommend you go away and use these. It's just something I was playing with. The one thing that I did notice as a side effect, because I'm someone who's never smoked, never taken nicotine, is that I felt very sick and very nauseous if I left it in for too long. I was playing around with different times or how long I'd leave it below the lip. And it's, for me, not something that I'm going to continue with. It's not something I'm going to advocate. I did notice some of the benefits of it when I did a couple of sessions, but for me, just someone who doesn't use nicotine, it made me feel worse than better. So nicotine was one of the things I tried and wasn't a big fan of. The one thing that I am a big fan of, the second thing, is caffeine. So caffeine blocks adenosine receptors in the brain, and adenosine is the chemical, for anyone who doesn't know, that builds up and makes you sometimes feel, drowsy or lethargic. So it helps basically to block out that, and it gives you that alertness and that feel good back, and kind of puts the brakes on adenosine for a certain period of time of when you need it to happen, which is, again, is why a lot of people take caffeine in the morning as soon as they wake up when they're a little bit drowsy. Now, the difference between nicotine and caffeine for attention is that the nicotine is much more like a sharper focus when you're taking it. It's short-lived. It feels a bit more laser-like for you to lock in, but obviously higher addiction risk. But whereas caffeine's a bit more sustainable, and the alertness is a little bit of a longer-term tool, and there's less of that razor edge focus. I just really enjoy caffeine. For me, from someone who drank caffeine for many years, I drink it mainly because I really enjoy. I'm a coffee snob, especially since I've been to Australia. Anyone who's been here will know how good the coffee is. So I tend to use it around study as well, though, and try not to take it too late on just because of the half-life of it. But again, I still love my Monster Energy, the zero sugar version. So I do fluctuate between both. But caffeine for me is something I always advocate, even to my Hyrox athletes who I coach, especially before events. It's a really good way to use as a stimulant. It's also really good for fat loss as well. Caffeine is great for fat loss because it kind of decreases appetite as well. So it acts as a good natural supplement for fat loss as well. There's many different benefits to caffeine of why I'd advocate it outside of helping your focus and attention as well. And the third one I've tried is modafinil. Modafinil is used to help people who have narcolepsy, obstructive sleep apnea, to stay awake during the day. It is the big gun, and some refer to it as the smart drug. Like, if you've ever seen the film Limitless, I remember the first time I ever tried modafinil, and it was when I just set up my business, and it's like one of the inside world business coaches was like, "Have you ever tried modafinil? It's like the Limitless drug." So I tried it, and to be honest, again, I ended up feeling quite sick and nauseous, I think, because I've never put a lot of different substances or drugs in my body. I'm quite sensitive to them. So when I did it, I just ended up feeling nauseous and sick. But unlike caffeine, it removes the adenosine, breaks completely, and actually improves work and memory capacity. It's been shown with modafinil. Boosts dopamine. So that reward system after you finish work is a lot bigger as well. And you stay awake, alert, locked in, without that wired or jittery feeling that you get from, I guess, nicotine and sometimes caffeine for people who have low tolerance to caffeine. So it's why pilots, surgeons, special forces have used it for fatigue and critical thinking simulations as well. So it's a really, really strong substance. Again, not one that I would recommend to anyone, but it's just something that I've tested through experience in my own life, and it's one thing that I know helps people with work and attention. Again, I'm not advocating any of these. I'm just using my own body as a test product for seeing what works for me, and also looking at the trade-off of the positives versus the drawbacks that it has on my own health and my own body. So there are a couple of things that, supplementation wise I've tried, but I'm a big fan of caffeine. And just my final thoughts on those and how they compare, I just jotted down a real summary of all of them. So nicotine, short but short-lived. Caffeine, safe, steady, great for everyday use. Modafinil is medical grade, sustained focus, especially under sleep pressure, but not something to casually pop like coffee. So again, I just say for anyone, just be mindful and careful whenever you're putting anything in your body, and everybody's different. But the main things, there's three things that I want to focus on today. And these are things that anybody can do in terms of bettering your attention and bettering your focus. And the first thing being sleep. Sleep loss affects attention and work and memory drop more than anything else. And this is why, for me, I notice my vigilance and my cognitive ability to function and focus is so much lower, especially after long travel trips, because my circadian rhythm's off, my sleep is off, and my recovery's down. And it's the first thing that goes is my attention whenever I'm tired. I can get through the day, but your focus is off. You can't really do any big lever tasks, and it's really difficult to do anything repetitive. So sleep is one of the biggest things that you can easily focus on. And I've had this discussion so many times over the last couple of weeks of how important sleep is, especially as you get older. And I guess that's why when I have these downward spirals with sleep or have stressful sleep, caffeine intake would probably have had a graph trend upwards. And it's probably not always the healthiest way to deal with that until I get good sleep back. But it's all about timing as well with caffeine. Like, I think, you shouldn't really be having anything more than 6 hours before bed. There's a lot of evidence to show about that. So I try and have mine earlier on in the day, not to affect my sleep. But the other thing I've actually been doing for sleep, and I've been tracking it on my Garmin Connect app because my Whoops ran out this week, is my sleep quality has been so much better since I've been wearing my nose strip and the hostage tape, which is basically mouth tape. And the reason for that is when I look at my average heart rate through the night when I'm not wearing it versus when I am wearing it, my heart rate's a lot higher. So I have a lot more stressful sleep and I wake up more. That's because sometimes what happens is your tongue can drop backwards when your mouth is open, your mouth breathing, and sometimes you'll snore or wake yourself up. And then when I wear the nose strip, obviously it opens and dilates my nasal passages and it shuts my mouth, so I'm nose breathe all night. And nasal breathing is actually really good for regulating your CNS and your heart rate. So I honestly, it sounds like such a faff at first to put a nose strip and mouth tape on. It's like, oh, just human wishy-washy bullshit. But honestly, they're the two things that have changed the game for me with sleep over the past week or so since I've been back in Australia. And I honestly hardly ever wake up in the night, and I wake up feeling like I could wrestle a bull. I just feel so much more energized in the morning because I've had a full sleep. And also I feel like I can breathe normally and not like a buffalo when I wake up first thing in the morning. If you ever look at any of the evidence around people who mouth breathe a lot versus nasal breathe, I think over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of research. If you look at people's jaws on any of the images, if you just Google them and look at mouth breathers versus nasal breathers and how over the last how many 100 years we've become human beings who mouth breathe a lot more, the change of the jawline, the face is actually crazy when you look at it. It's crazy how it's changed. We have like a lot of softer chins and I think a bit more like fat or less of the, I guess, length of the jawline and width of the jawline. So mouth guard or hostage tape, nasal strip is honestly, if you try it, drop me a message and let me know how you get on. I think sometimes at first it feels a bit strange when you have the mouth tape on. You feel a bit claustrophobic. I started by doing it for like half the night. I take it off, and now I just do it all through. And it's way easier than you think. You're not going to choke. Like, you'd wake yourself up and take it off with just a piece of tape over your mouth. But it's honestly really helped. The other thing which has been found to really disrupt sleep, and I know some of you guys may do it if you're into your reading, is the reading with like an LED book. So I forgot what they're called now. They call it the notepads or the Amazon notepads or whatever they're called. But even the ebook lights, they've been created to not affect your melatonin levels too much. But even having that before bed does suppress melatonin and delays circadian rhythm timing and reduces the next morning alertness. There's been a PubMed study that was done on this as well, and how that light affects you during the evening. So a paper book is a much better alternative. And I just feel like, because we're on screen so much anyway, getting away from a screen, having a physical book is just such a beautiful thing to touch the pages and feel them and turn the page and have it crinkled up in your bag and have the evidence and be able to write on them. I just much prefer it. But the negative impact on sleep may be due to there's a short wavelength and rich light that comes from the screen. And there was a study done with participants reading an LED ebook that found it took them longer to fall asleep and had a reduced even sleepiness, reduced melatonin secretion, and later timing of the circadian clock, and reduced next morning alertness than when reading a printed book. So again, not saying ditch your Amazon pad thing or whatever it is. Maybe just try and use it in the day, and if you can read a physical book at night, it's going to be a lot better for your sleep, because just having that regularity of light beats perfection all the time, and hopefully makes you less stressed in your sleep as well. So sleep is such a big thing for attention and focus. It sounds like wishy-washy bullshit, but it's the thing that's going to help you a lot. Just get that much better feeling. I wake up so much better in the morning, ready to go. Now I'm doing the mouth tape thing as well as having a morning routine. But I think the other thing is that is why light is like a performance drug, because it has such a big change on the mind and your hygiene as well. But the second thing is, and it's something probably most of you who listen to this podcast for this reason are hugely into health and fitness. And one of the big levers that you can pull every single day is movement. Movement upgrades the brain in so many ways, and acute exercise boosts cognitive mood and function as well. So you being fit, healthy movement actually helps your attention span. I think probably massively, because it just pulls you away from the screen for an hour or two. But I think the other way that which you can do that as well, and it doesn't have to be vigorous exercise, you can just be going for a walk, really helps. And it's found that your creativity is better during and shortly after going for a walk. I think it's probably just because, like we spoke about before, you have that optic flow, you're outside, you're breathing, your attention's maybe focused on the leaves, the branches, the footsteps, rather than who's talking whatever shit on TikTok about, I don't know, what crap, whatever's floating through there, honey badgers fighting everything in the animal kingdom. But then doing aerobic exercise actually been found to improve executive function. So your working memory, the flexibility, the control that you have over what you are consuming day to day. So walking, creativity, aerobic training is good for working memory. So doing something every day is something that I've done for a while now, even if it's just really low stuff, or whether it's a walk or whether it's a bike, because I just feel like it makes me feel better. And there's obviously actual evidence which helps support the fact that it's better for our attention, it's better for our focus, and it takes it away from just being drilled into a phone or into a screen. It's going to help creativity over a prolonged period of time. And I think, for me, having this rebuild of attention and thinking about a lot since I come back to Australia, which is why I wanted to speak about on today's podcast, has been really important to me. I think it's probably going to be really important to you if you feel you have a lot of things going on in your life, especially if you may be someone who's got kids, you've got a house, you've got bills, you've got family, you want to pursue fitness, you've got a job, career, friends you need to go out and socialize with. There's so many things that we have in our lives. And it's like, where do we give this focus and attention? And it can because it all requires our focus and attention. Even to show up and be a good friend, even to show up and be a good partner, takes focus and attention and energy to put into people. And if you show up to those relationships, those friendships every day, and you've absolutely zapped all your focus and all your attention from either a phone or from your work, those relationships are going to eventually fall away. Nobody wants to be around people who show up as sappy losers, basically, and don't want to give anything back to the relationship or friendship, because that's how you end up with little friends or no friends. So I think being mindful of that is hugely important, to make sure that you continue to have a refresh. Because I think once you've been with people who lift you up, and I spoke to someone the other day about how we have friends that are like treadmills and some are like sofas. We're around some people and they make us feel like we need to have a lie down afterwards. We all have those people in our lives. I'm sure you have them. I'm sure you met them. I'm sure you've experienced them. And then we have some people who are like treadmill people. After we've been with them, we just feel like we want to go for a run, or we want to do something, or we want to do some work. And they're the people that you want to be around, because the people that you're around have such a big hit on you. And it can really play a big impact then on how committed you are and how motivated you are to go and do tasks after, if you're around people that elevate you all the time. And the third thing, which we've kind of spoke about throughout this podcast, is dopamine. Dopamine is a huge element that ties closely with attention and management of your attention. So to understand the dopamine loop is really important. It's a chemical like seeking or craving, which is why we get it so much from phones after we've been on and we've got a notification hit, or we've seen someone beautiful on Instagram, or we've done something, and every time we check our phone, we get that little dopamine hit, which then ties us into using it more and more. But the problem is those constant small hits that we get create a baseline of dopamine, leaving you restless and stressed and unfulfilled. And it stretches our focus away from things and reality and real life. So it's like, it's like living off sugar snacks. You get a quick spike, you get a quick hit, but it's not long lasting energy that you get from, if I can have an oats or some good beef and rice and good 442. So we need to try and reduce that novelty as much as we can through doing other things and implementing practical fixes. 3 things that I've wrote down that I sometimes do is either I just tidied up all my apps on my phone, so I deleted some of them off my home screen that I didn't use. The other thing I've done quite recently is there's 2 different ways you can do it. You can completely turn off the color on your phone, so it goes black and white. Because nothing looks as good in black and white. When you look at your phone in black and white, it just seems quite boring. And there's another way you can do it later on where you put your phone in a red zone mode. So your full phone screen, you can still go on it, but everything's in red. I think it's supposed to be better for the light that comes from the phone, and your attention is less focused on things with a big red screen, apparently. So that's been good. And then switching from short form to long form. So I consume a lot more YouTube videos now and podcasts now, and try and stay off Instagram and TikTok as much as possible, and trying to be a creator and not a consumer. I just find that, again, watching long form stuff just expands my brain and conditions it and trains it in a way that I want it to respond, and not to quick short form content. So that's how I'm trying to, I guess, 1, focus on sleep, 2, be present in exercise and be creative in exercise and think about things that I'm maybe going to do, or think about my beliefs and not my thoughts, and have that non-actual spaces. And then 3, how am I conditioning my dopamine hits? How am I training my brain to focus my attention on the length of content or the things that I'm consuming? So hopefully they're helpful. The one thing I do want you guys to do is, if you listen to this or you're watching this, or afterwards you're thinking, I would love to jump in on that bit or ask a question on that bit, please drop questions in. I always leave the email address for Unhinged Curiosity in all the show notes wherever you listen, and I'm always really keen to hear from you guys. Obviously on YouTube and Spotify, you can drop comments or notes or questions in there as well, and sometimes I won't always be able to get back to them, but I'll usually save them, and every now and again I'll do a Q&A episode, especially if you guys enjoy the Q&As as well. Because I definitely enjoy them. I enjoy speaking with you guys. I enjoy gauging with you as much as possible as a viewer, because I appreciate you spending 45 minutes to an hour listening to me ramble on, and hopefully as much as anything you take a couple of nuggets with you, and it helps action, take things into the rest of your day, because I want to give you things that I try, put my own brain and body through, that you can then take and find if it works for you, because not everything's going to be for you that I talk about. Some of the things are going to be maybe too extreme, and I'm in a part of my life now where, I do have a bit more free time. I don't have a family at the moment yet, and I can, I guess, just be that lab rat who puts themselves through a few things and finds out more about what's going to work, and maybe you can take them away in a smaller pinch. Take it in a smaller percentage and apply it to life, because I know that a lot of people are busy, and you won't. I think sometimes you can listen to podcasts and think, I need to do this, I need to do all of that stuff, and it doesn't fit in with your lifestyle. So don't think you have to consume things and think, I need to implement all of this Ben has said for it to be applicable. Just choosing one thing from today might just be, I'm going to choose the sleep element. I'm going to try the nose strip. I'm going to try the mouth guard. And by the way, I'm not endorsed by any of these companies. But there's a company, I always pronounce it wrong. I think it's called NEMA or FEMA nose tape. I use that for it. And they work really, really well. I do like the clip-on ones when I'm doing events, but they're not practical to sleep in. So just take one thing. It doesn't have to be applying everything, because I think you can get carried away. And even I listen to podcasts sometimes, and I think, I need to do this, and I'll write it down or write notes down, and I end up with this endless list of information to do. But I think you're much better to take one thing, like we've been talking about, monotasking, and just focus on that and put your energy into one avenue of how that could make your life better. And then you can focus on something else once it becomes subconscious. But hopefully you enjoyed today's episode, guys. This was a little bit of a short one because my attention isn't up to scratch yet since I've been back in Oz. I'm back over here for at least another 4 weeks. I'm just training for a 100k bike race at the moment, which is from Brisbane to the Gold Coast on the 12th of October. So I'm kind of locked in for that at the moment, enjoying being on the bike, enjoying having a full-time stationary butt plug that I spend too much of my time on. It feels like I've retired early, but I'm very much enjoying the bike at the moment. And hopefully, you guys might be out running now, on a bike now, training now, listen to this. And please, please, please continue to leave reviews on the podcast. It means the world to me, and it helps me continue to spend more time on it, get better guests, continue to grow it. And please share it with someone who needs it, and continue to tag me on your Instagram stories as well. I love seeing you guys listen to it, whether you're on a walk right now, whether you're on a run right now, wherever you are listening to it. Please continue to share, because it's great to see and have that real life feedback where it's just me sitting behind a microphone in my bedroom speaking into a camera, which it doesn't feel too real life. But hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Continue just to live and not live in your phone. And the next couple of episodes are, I'm going to try and pull a couple of guests on again, but they're probably going to be me, you, just having a chat, which is the episodes that I love most. But enjoy the rest of your day. Continue to show up and don't overwhelm yourself. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.